This is man-made mead. Today I'm going to make a pretty simple mead. I'm making a cider of sorts. This is something I found at Walmart. This is a pumpkin spice, basically just a pumpkin spice apple cider. And I want to go ahead and use about a gallon of it in total. And I'm going to use a gallon of it. It's got a fairly high gravity. I went ahead and checked the gravity on it. It's about 1.05, 1.06. So ultimately I know I'll lose a little bit of sediment to sediment. I want to use these two, and this will equal about a gallon. Then I'm going to use about a half gallon of water, spring water. And then I'm also going to use about a pound of honey. And I want to, I think between the three, that'll make a pretty interesting mead. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Of course, we're using, we got starter yeast. We're going to use a Lalvin K1 B1116 packet of yeast. Let's get that started so it is going. Alright, so most people who watch my videos know my process, but I want to explain for everyone else. I'm going to go ahead and pour a little bit of water into here. We're going to rehydrate our yeast since they're dehydrated yeast. Pouring just a little bit, just enough to get going. Everything has been sanitized with Star San, so it is ready to be used. It is safe to use. We're going to turn on our heat up to this and heat this up to about 100 degrees. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get, while this is heating up, we're going to use Go Firm Protect to put into here to give some nutrients to the water, which will ultimately go into the yeast. Alright, so I've got a scale right here, kind of past. We're going to get, since we need 5 grams worth, we're going to get, it's 1.25 grams of this for every 1 gram of yeast. So that's 6.25. Ooh, that is exactly 5 right there. So we're going to get just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so that is, that's actually 7 grams, but ultimately it's better to give them nutrients and no nutrients at all. You don't want to overdo it and give them too many nutrients. The next step is real simple. We're going to take and add it straight into here, and it is sticking to the sides of this. Probably good that I got a little extra. And we can stir pretty vigorously because ultimately this is it gets clumpy, and we want to make sure that the clumps disappear and get them to really just meld into the water. So I'll stir this up. Alright, so this is ready to warm up to 100 degrees. I will be checking it as I go and seeing that it gets to exactly about 100, probably 102, and then we will pitch our yeast and let it get started. So right now it's at 92 and climbing. So in just a moment we'll go ahead and pitch our yeast once it gets to 100. Alright, we have reached 100 degrees and it is ready to go ahead and have the yeast put in. So what happens here is the yeast will rehydrate, meaning that in their dry form they're not really alive. Now we're going to activate them to where they'll be alive. And the nutrient that we put in is very helpful for actually taking and applying nutrients into their cells in this point. And what you ultimately gain from that is a better fermentation, a quicker fermentation, and a healthier fermentation. You want your yeast to be healthy, and this allows them to not be so stressed as they are going through all the sugars and everything. Our next step is to go ahead and make our must. So let's go ahead and start that. This will sit for about 20 to 25 minutes to rehydrate. Okay, so I'm at a little bit of a complex with this because right now this pumpkin spice apple cider, I'm not going to pitch the yeast immediately because I want to give them kind of a taste of the must and everything. I'm going to put my half gallon of water into here, and then I'm going to put my pound of honey in. So this is what I used for my yeast water. I'm going to add, relative to this gallon, half gallon. So we are good about right there. Now I'm also going to take, when I get my honey out, I need to measure it to get the exact 1 gallon, and that will be fairly simple. But we got to scoop it out of my big 60-pound pail. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to be putting the honey into this. This is the previous container I've used. Now, the reason I'm doing it is because I'll ultimately take off this label. This was just a what I have for the moment. With scooping, I can kill two birds with one stone. It's easier for me to measure out honey in the future when I have when I can pour it and stuff. But I want to have smaller batches of honey so I don't have to dip as much. So 1 gallon dipping out of here, or 1 pound, is kind of a pain. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this up in the meantime. But I'm also going to use it to measure. So we're going to take and we're going to get out a pound of honey, and then we will put it into our water. Okay, so this is ready to be stirred up, and it'll be super simple. Because all I need to do is take and stir my honey water together. Then we're going to take our apple cider and stuff and put that in as well. So here we go. About a half gallon of water, pound of honey. Pretty decent ratio. Really, I did it this way for one reason, and that is because the apple cider is a little bit colder right now. So honey's not going to mix into that. This water is room temp. The room temp will mix in with the honey just fine. But the cold will not. Alright, I stirred this very vigorously so I can make sure and get as much oxygen into this must as possible. Our next step is to go ahead and put the pumpkin spice in. Here goes our pumpkin spice apple cider. It's really good. I mean, I tried just a taste of it. It's by itself, it's really good. And I'll be curious to see how it all mixes with the honey and the water and everything. So we're adding this in. It's got a little bit of sediment here at the bottom, which on this next one I won't try and pour in. I'm gonna try to avoid it so I don't have too much sediment to deal with. But a little sediment's not too bad, especially since I'm planning for that with my extra half gallon of water and must with my honey. So here's this. I'm gonna stop about here. Next step, stir this mixture up as well. And I'm doing something a little different. I have, because there's gonna be a lot of pectic in apple, and it's just in the nature of apple, there's a lot of pectic. I'm going to put some pectic enzyme in. This pectic enzyme you put in before the start of the fermentation. And basically it'll help it clear up a little better. Ultimately, apple can be sometimes hard to clear because of all the pectic in it. And it will just help it clear. But the thing is, you do it before the fermentation. That's part of why I'm waiting. I'm going to make a yeast starter for one. But two, I want to make sure that pectic has time to get in there before I pitch the yeast. And ultimately, the yeast will do better if they're not fighting against the pectic. Let's get a quick gravity reading of this. We're going to take some and pour it into our tube, and then we will take the gravity reading. Here's a quick gravity reading to see where the must is at currently. It's going to be a little bit high. Let's see. We're at about 1.7. So, sorry, 10.07. So, looking at that puts us at about 9%, which that's pretty good to me. That's not too heavy of a mead, but it's also not too light, so it's a good level for us to be at. So let's go ahead and mix this back in. I'm gonna get just a small taste of it. I'm not gonna pour all of it in, so I can get a taste of what the must is just like. Our next step is to wait until the yeast are ready to go, and then we will introduce the must into the yeast and start acclimating, and then we'll make a yeast starter. In the meantime, while we wait for the yeast, we're going to also add our pectic enzyme. We need a half teaspoon per gallon of must. Here is the half teaspoon. Now this is a 2-gallon container. It's about a quarter, 3/4 full. So I'm going to assume about 3/4 teaspoon. So we're going to use that. And we're going to use our 1/4 teaspoon. We have put now 3/4 of a teaspoon into this, and we'll stir it up. Okay, we are ready to go ahead and put some must into a container. and start acclimating our yeast. It's real simple. I'm just gonna take a clean cup and we're gonna add some into here. Start acclimating them, and there we go. Let's also see what temperature we're at now. Generally this temperature will drop over time, so it should be somewhere in a manageable range. 73, that's good. I think that's a good range. The fermentation temperature range for the K1 B1116 is 59 to 86 degrees. So that's right in the center. You want to stay on the lower end of the spectrum. So I want to stay probably about 63 to 72 of that range. And I think that's at the top. My house is about 70, so it'll hopefully sit at about 70. Now what we can do with this is we can also go ahead and put it into a different container so it can be the yeast starter. I often use wine bottles as yeast starters because all I've done and all I do is I take a synthetic cork and I will drill a hole in it and then be able to put my airlock in, and it seals just like it would any other container. So we'll put this in here, and then it will be a yeast starter for about 24 hours. What I'm also going to do is I want to make sure, I'll take this off in a moment, and put some oxygen into this with a little bitty aerator. Stick it in there and it'll just provide oxygen. I'm going to do the same thing with this. So let's get some air going in to this right here, and then we will wrap it up. Okay, so I have my little aerator. This is an oxygen stone on the end. Basically, you just set it in there. It'll supply oxygen into the must, which will help the yeast in the future as they need oxygen to reproduce and do everything they need. I'm also going to do the same thing with this. I'll let that set for about 25 minutes and just a few minutes with this one. And then, of course, it will go sit in its little cabinet for a while, and then 24 hours from now, about 48 hours from now, I'll go ahead and take and put my yeast starter in, or once I see that there's activity happening inside of the yeast starter. But that is it for this part. Okay, so it's been 24 hours. We're going to take and put in our mixture, which is our yeast and everything. And it should be real simple. And let's go ahead and do it. So now that this is mixed in, we're going to go let it set for as long as it needs to go through the primary. Hey, this is man-made mead. Today we're talking about the pumpkin apple cider mead that I took and used a half gallon of it, and then about a pound of honey and a little bit of water, and mixed it all together. And this thing has already had problems. First of all, it did not ferment initially, and I could not figure out why. Couldn't get to ferment, nothing would happen. One of these seals are funky on the lids, so I was kind of like, maybe it's that. Anyways, it has been sitting, I made it on 11/4, so it's been sitting for, what, almost a month? And it is bad. It is basically, it started off like not fermenting, getting really weird. I'd smell it, even now, I smell it and it does not smell, it smells kind of like, if you live near Arby's, you ever had Arby's? It smells like Arby's sauce. I think what has happened with it is like full of preservatives from the apple, the drink, basically the pumpkin apple cider mix I used. And so those preservatives and the yeast did not get along, and so I think the preservatives won. So I tried it just a moment ago, and I could try it on camera again, but basically it is super sour. It is not good. Smells funky. It is honestly just wasting space in this bucket right now. So what I want to do is kind of get rid of it, but I want to use this as a learning lesson. So if you make something that's like a store-bought like apple cider or something like that, watch out for preservatives. Preservatives are super hard for yeast to ferment on, and so I think like while you can sometimes get them to work, like I've seen people take grape juice and dump them in something and put yeast on top, I honestly don't think you're making a great product, because the yeast are having such a hard time, and they're putting off flavors and all of these weird we don't want fusels, which off flavors and smells are fusels. So ultimately, the preservatives really killed this and would kill any mead that has that same thing. So try to go as organic as possible that has as little preservatives, and that will help you keep from running into the problem I did. So this thing, yeah, it's not good. I think it's dead. And so that means we get to retire it from life, and I want to send it off with a bang and shower the earth with it. So we're gonna do that right now. Okay, so that was kind of fun to just throw it away. Ultimately, it's not fun to lose a mead. I think anybody can attest to that. This is my second time I've made a mead that's failed in some way. So you learn from your mistakes though, and I hope you've learned from mine so you don't make the same mistake that I did. If you want to support me and help me maybe hopefully not make mistakes in the future, comment down below for one and tell me what you think using preservatives. Have you had success using something that's used preservatives before? You might have, and I don't know, it could be interesting to hear. So tell me about that, and then check out the links down below. I've got a Patreon. You can go support me there. You can get free content beforehand, so people will see videos 3 to 4 days before if you're a patron of mine. Opportunities to win t-shirts and a lot of cool things. So head on over there. I've got a website now, manmademead.com, where you can also support me with Amazon links, and there's a blog and a bunch of other things that will help me out. And then finally, I've got other things, Society 6 t-shirts and just a lot of different stuff. So lots of links below. I know that it's kind of overbearing and cumbersome to go look at them, but your support means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Tell me about your most recent mead mistake. I'd love to hear it. Maybe it might make me feel like I haven't made as big of a mistake as I have. So thanks guys for watching. I hope you have a great day, and cheers.